Well, welcome back to another episode of the Cruise Conversations podcast. I'm Michael.
And I'm Frank.
And today's episode is episode number 98, and we're talking about some of the top things you should and shouldn't add on to your upcoming cruise. Let's jump into it.
Well, happy Wednesday. You know, Michael, this was one of those topics that when you texted me, I was surprised we haven't covered this one in 98 weeks.
Yeah, I was going through the topics because I saw we had this on the list, and the only thing I could find of in the past was talking about the drink packages on cruise ships and if you should add that or not. But we did have a list of, I think, either like the top things you should or maybe shouldn't add. I was like, oh, we'll just do both.
Yeah, so before we get into this week's episode, just a couple of reminders. Number one, make sure you check out our vlogs. We're still working through the MSC Seashore wrap up as well as the Icon of the Seas. And then we're moving on to the boys cruise on Allure of the Seas. And then we got some more, cruises planned for the year, so more vlogs coming out. So make sure you follow us on YouTube. Also, we do have a website coming out, so go ahead and bookmark that. It's cruiseconversationspodcast.com. Go ahead and make sure you bookmark it. Right now, it's just like a landing page with all of our links, but we have a lot more coming to the site over the next couple of weeks, and we're really excited to share that with you. But Michael, it's been about 5 weeks. We've had a lot of really cool guests on. It's been about 5 weeks, so let's go through some of the cruise news for today.
Yeah, Frank, like you said, it's been about 5 weeks. We've had a lot of great guests come on the podcast. But, we sprinkled a little bit of cruise news in here and there. We talked about how Carnival's renaming Mahogany Bay to Isla Tropical and Royal's canceling some stops to Labadee. Really kind of just connecting some of the news to some of the stops our guests have been talking about on the past episodes. But the first thing we have to talk about today, Carnival's announced that pretty much since COVID over the last 5 years, that they've put $1.8 billion into dry docks of their ships.
Wow.
So the number they kind of said there's been 42 different dry docks. A lot of them were, return to service dry docks post-pandemic. They've done some of the switches from their sister brand ships that they moved over to the Carnival line. And then obviously just the normal dry docks that I think have to happen like every 4 or 5 years or so, depending on how old the ship is. Back in 2011, Carnival had kind of announced their Fun Ship 2.0, which was kind of their refurb program. And, it brought a lot of the Carnival staples to the ships over the last decade plus, bringing things like Guy's Burgers, the Alchemy Bar, and just other popular venues to the ship. Christine Duffy said she doesn't really see a 3.0 happening right now, but they have kind of in the current dry docks been adding some newer things to the ships, like the Heroes Tribute Lounge, for example. This is something that in most ships' dry docks that haven't had it, they're adding that to the ship, and as well as just adding new entertainment to the ships, new non-smoking casinos to the ships, while, the XL class has kind of added the new venues overall. So yeah, excited to see what they kind of continue to add. And I think we're still a couple years out from that next ship class to kind of see what kind of switches from the XL class to that ship class in the future.
The next thing we wanted to cover in terms of cruise news today is that Margaritaville at Sea just recently revealed their new casino program. It's really to benefit the seasoned casino players as well as those just casual players, allowing people to earn complimentary cruises. Again, similar to some of the other big lines that we've talked about in the past. They've got other perks as well, like you get premium drinks in the casino, dining and spa credits depending on how much you're spending. And then also they do have a status match program. I started looking into this, Michael, because I just hit Prime on Royal, which is really cool. You can actually use some of those free cruises that you get on Royal to match with newer cruise lines like Virgin as well as Margaritaville at Sea and MSC. Like they see that you're a casino player and they're like, oh, we'll let you go on a free cruise to kind of spend money on their casino and kind of build loyalty that way. So a really cool thing for those that are willing to play in the casino to get free cruises. I think it's a good thing to look into if you want to check out Margaritaville at Sea.
Yeah, and I think the interesting thing too, Frank, when I was reading over this was the fact you can give away your complimentary cruise too and just let someone else go on it. So you don't have to be
I didn't even know that. That's insane. Yeah.
I guess at that point too, still being a newer cruise line, kind of like you said, getting the other person kind of just interested in the casino program and playing as well.
Yeah, that's a good idea, honestly. Like you said, build a following.
All right, Frank, so the next thing we have to talk about is MSC. We've talked about on the podcast in the past how they're continuing to expand in the U.S. market. We've talked about things like the World America coming to Miami, the new terminal that was built and opened in Miami, and then just some rumors of things, sailing's going to be happening from Texas soon and Alaska. Well, MSC is continuing to kind of just drop more details of some possibilities that may come down the line here. So first off, the next world-class ship is slated to come in 2027. That's going to be coming to Port Canaveral. So right now they have 1 or 2 ships sailing year-round, or most of the year, I think, down in Port Canaveral. But this will actually allow, when I was on the seashore that was doing week-long cruises, that'll be able to kind of switch to the shorter sailings and then let the new world class come in, do the week-long sailings. Also, a possible second pier coming to Ocean Cay, be able to allow, like we said, 2 ships there at the same time now, kind of just expanding the private island there. They're also, it's kind of been on social media right now. They're building another little island to the side of Ocean Cay that it sounds like Explora Journeys may be using down the road. So kind of like we've talked about how Ocean Cay is a man-made island. They're building another one out there. So I don't know, it's kind of just cool to see the little sand growing out there. And then there's a couple other things that they've announced may happen in the future. They're looking at possibly building a beach club in the Caribbean. And then they've also kind of hinted at that in 2027, we could see some West Coast deployments. So, yeah, I mean, it's kind of just shaping up to be a lot of growth that we've kind of seen in the past couple of years, right? Like I'm seeing more MSC content, I feel like now than I was a couple years ago. So just excited to see how they continue to expand here in the States.
No, Michael, I mean, it's really cool to see all the things that MSC is doing, like you mentioned, and hopefully over the next couple of weeks, hint, we can have some awesome guests that can come on and talk about their experiences on the World America. So stay tuned for that if you are listening and, interested in hearing about what the World America has to offer. Our last piece of cruise news for today, Royal Caribbean Group offered around $350 million for a big piece of land in Freeport, Bahamas. This is actually an old hotel, but this is actually for their Celebrity Cruise brand. The news came out actually by the reveal through the Central Bank of the Bahamas, who said that Celebrity basically offered to spend, again, $350 million to buy this long closed beach club. It was a lot of celebrities. I think they named different celebrities that have been to this resort. And I think it closed back in 2011. It's over 40 acres that they're pretty much trying to transform into a recreational and entertainment facility. So we'll kind of see if this deal comes through. Obviously there's a lot that has to happen between the Bahamas and, the Royal Caribbean Group, just kind of shaking hands and all the approvals and all that have to happen. But it would be really cool to see Celebrity kind of having their own kind of private island, similar to how we have Coco Cay. So we'll have to keep you guys posted. If we see anything else, we'll let you know.
All right, well, before we jump into the topic, Frank, you were texting me the other day. You were like, man, I have a lot of FOMO today. Because, we've had a lot of clients that just got on ships yesterday. So shout out to Joe's Bachelor Cruise. I mean, there's probably 10, 12, 14 of them.
Yeah, I think it's between 14 and 20 people that are on that one. And the same actually ship, we've got Jason and his family, some friends on there that booked through us. And then Krista, who's a listener, also booked on that one on Utopia. So man, everyone was sending us photos yesterday of boarding Utopia of the season. I was like, gosh, I mean, we're in Charlotte, the weather's good, but not nearly as awesome as boarding one of the coolest ships out there. So, and
it was funny because you told Jason, you're like, hey, we have a bachelor party on the cruise that we helped book, and he's like, oh yeah, we've seen them around the ship already, and that was just boarding day. So yeah, we really hope y'all are having a great time on your cruises. All right, Frank, so the last 2 episodes we did before a lot of the interviews we've been doing the last month or so, we did 5 reasons to book early and then tips for a smooth embarkation day. So this is kind of just the next thing in kind of this little flow I feel like we're in, is talking about things you should and shouldn't add to your upcoming cruise. And like we hinted at earlier, super early on, episode 8. So this is going back the first 2 months of this podcast.
90 weeks ago, basically.
Yeah, we did an episode of whether or not booking a drink package makes sense for your sailing. So yeah, I'm excited to kind of just dive into some of these things today and kind of help you better judge whether you should or shouldn't add some of these to your upcoming sailing.
All right, Michael. So the first thing that you could possibly add before your cruise is dining packages, right? So they let you bundle specialty dining. Obviously, when you're booking your cruise, you have a lot of free options, whether it's, the buffets, a la carte. You can walk up and grab certain things like Guy's Burgers. But a lot of the major cruise lines out there have specialty dining, and a lot, you can actually pre-book it. and potentially save money, right? So you could do an unlimited package. Maybe they'll let you do, 2 different dining spots. Like if you do like on Royal, you could do like a chops plus 1, or you can do like a 3-night package, which is actually what we booked on Alaska. So Michael, what do you think? Do you think that this is something that you should add on your cruise, or do you think you should kind of stay away from adding this one?
All right, so when I was kind of looking at this point for this episode, I was saying this is an ad. I think overall, I feel like the length of your vacation or your cruise kind of may play a part into this. Like if you're on a shorter cruise, for example, and you're already going to be doing one night of specialty dining, like you said, a chops plus 1 or kind of those shorter packages may make sense, right? Now, some cruise lines, like Royal, for example's unlimited dining package, also allows you to have some lunch at some of the different venues throughout your sailing as well as credits to some of the a la carte restaurants. So
that's a good point. I feel like the thing that people sleep on is like being able to go to Playmakers, for example. Like that credit that you get there gets you a ton of food. And yes, it's like bar food, but having wings and like the burgers and poke nachos, like all of those things are so good. And like you don't have that anywhere else. Like you don't really have fresh wings or poke nachos anywhere else on like a cruise ship. So to me it's totally worth it just for that.
Yeah, and then I think I would be more inclined. I know I've added some dining packages on a longer sailing because I feel like a shorter sailing, you're probably not going to get as burnt out as some of the included dining. And when we had Mitchell on last week, for example, he kind of talked about how obviously he was on a Royal sailing recently, and he knew that, for example, French night was going to be one of the nights, and the family just at first wasn't really interested in that menu, so he thought maybe that was a night to explore specialty dining.
Yeah, I think if it is going to be something that you're planning on doing, I would pre-book it, right? So at the end of the day, like if you're going to get on and you're like expecting that maybe you're going to get sick of the dining room, like for us, 7 nights in the dining room on Alaska, we just knew that we don't mind the dining room. We just knew that we needed to change it up. We think that 3 nights in a specialty, especially this ship that we're going on, has Jamie's. So we're like, okay, that is a no-brainer. If you're planning on doing it, pre-booking it is the best way to save money. So to me, I think it is a thing that you would want to add if that's something that interests you.
All right, the next thing we have on our list is thermal spa passes. So this, depending on kind of how new your ship is, may have some different features than others, but the thermal spa on the ship includes, things like the hydrotherapy, hot tubs, and saunas, and salt rooms, and snow rooms. And I mean, like I said, depending on how new the ship is, there'll probably be more features than not here. Frank, what are your thoughts on adding the thermal spa pass to your sailing?
Yeah, Michael, I think you set it up perfectly. I think this one really depends. I think if you look at the ship and I would recommend before you get on, before you actually go onto the ship, I would actually watch a YouTube video that shows you what you're paying for, right? Because thermal spa, to your point, on one of the new beautiful ships is going to have a ton of amenities. And then I've heard some things like, for example, Virgin has kind of a smaller one. So you just want to know what it looks like and what you're signing up for. If you're like, hey, I want to do this, again, one of those things that I'd recommend getting before the cruise, not only from a pricing standpoint, but also it can sell out, right? They're not going to sell, 1,000 tickets to the thermal spa for your cruise. So you're going to want to make sure that if it's something you're interested in, go ahead and reserve that ahead of time. So that way, you have the space reserved and that you're able to use that venue.
This was one thing when videos started coming out of the World America. I was glad people were actually in kind of recording kind of on those preview sailings. Because, I had always heard, especially when I was on the seashore, that the ship had a good thermal spa, but I just couldn't find that many videos online about it. So I don't know. Like I said, I think this is something that, and I think we've talked about too, like Alaska. Yeah, I mean, we're going to be sailing. It's not going to be freezing cold, but we're not going to be in the Caribbean. So it may be nice to go use some of those features kind of after being out at port for the day.
So, Michael, the next one on the list is Royal Caribbean's Key or Carnival's Faster to the Fun. Basically, this is where you pay a little bit extra to get some of these perks like early boarding, maybe private access to like the flow riders or some of the slides. What do you think about these?
These, I feel like for the price you're paying, probably just doesn't seem worth it at the end of the day. We've talked about how a lot of like the check-in times really don't matter that much anymore. Like you can probably still show up pretty early and still get on pretty early. I mean, I don't know about Carnival's Faster to the Fun. I know Royal's the Key comes with like Wi-Fi access, right? Yeah. So I feel like that's the type of thing, like if you know you're going to be paying for Wi-Fi, maybe you look at the price difference to see if adding on some of those other, like you said, exclusive times around Royal Ship, for example, makes sense. But I know for these two cruise lines, these are kind of the two things that we get asked about a good amount. Like, hey, does it make sense to add this? And most of the time, we normally say no. What do you think, Frank?
I would agree with that. I feel like especially on Royals, like the key I mentioned, you get extra time at the Flow Rider that is like exclusive, but usually the times that they're like signing you up for like 6 or 7 p.m. where everyone else is eating dinner, right? So it's like if that is really important to you and you're going to skip your dinner to go do the Flow Rider, then sure. Even like some of the other things, they seem really good, but then it's not like that much better, to your point, than what you would normally get. So I would just look at that. I think with the key, you get like a lunch on embarkation day, and it's usually in the dining room, and they serve chops. So if that's really interesting to you, I would weigh that into the decision. But again, to your point, like for the key, considering it's Wi-Fi as well, I think it comes out to like 25 to 30 a person a day. And then, so do the math, maybe it's a $10 difference against the Wi-Fi, $70 more for the cruise. And then you're starting to think about, okay, what am I actually getting for that? Right. Yeah. And so like the key, I think, comes with, specific seats in some of the shows, but you still have to get to the show and make sure you have a show reservation, and then you have the key seats. So, how much better is like those seats that they're reserving at the shows versus like the other seats that you can get without having the key? Just things to think about. So I agree. I've never added this one, but we have a lot of family and clients that have actually added the key, and some people really love it. Just not something that I usually recommend.
Especially too, I feel like it used to be a little bit cheaper, and then post startup again, it kind of went up in price, and then it, like you said, it just hasn't seemed to make that much sense for me to add on personally. I know. All right, so we talked thermal spa passes, right? Let's flip to the other side and look at spa services on cruise ships, Frank. I know personally I've never added anything on in the spa or like any sort of haircut or anything like that. How about you? Have you ever added any of this to your sailings?
I have added this one. So I think like it's funny because I'm trying to get my wife to go on another cruise this fall, and she was like, one of the biggest things that she said that was like this, part of the deal was to get a spa.
Okay.
On go get a massage on the cruise. I was like, that's easy enough. And she's actually, I think we talked about for Alaska, she's doing like the 3 blowouts, and we talked about like, I think with Megan or maybe with some of the other guests that we had on, it's really nice, right? Like you can, I think it's like $45 to $50 each time, and for 3, it's just, you don't have to wash your hair, and it's a nice thing. We've also done like massages on board. It's one of those things where it's like a splurge, right? So I would say it's not like you're going to save a ton of money by pre-booking this. So this is one that you can just kind of get on. And a lot of times they'll do specials where they'll, say, hey, we're running low on bookings for the spa. And you'll start to see like some of the discounts that come out, especially maybe later in the cruise if they haven't hit their quotas. So this is one that's like, it's tough to say like yes or no, like you should do it or you shouldn't, because spas are kind of like one of those things that's like very personal. Like if you like getting massages or you kind of want to splurge, but again, you're going to pay a premium like anything else. Like if you were to go to your spa and, near your house at home, you're going to pay like a third of the price than you would if you were, doing it on board the cruise. So if you're going to do it on board the cruise, just know you're going to be splurging on it, right? That it's going to cost probably $200 to $300 for, an hour-long 90-minute treatment, unless you get a really good discount, versus, being at home, you could probably get a massage for like $100 to $200. So I don't know. That's just me personally. I think it's one of those things where hard to put this in a bucket. I would say it's, probably a bit expensive for what it is, but if you want to splurge, go for it. Probably the most debated one that we see is the drink package. I think when we say drink package, everyone thinks alcohol. They think, everything is included. But a lot of cruise lines have different options, right? I know they've got coffee cards, which Megan talked about last week. They've got like refreshment package where basically it's everything but alcohol. They have soda packages. Obviously, they have the deluxe with everything. So, you kind of have to, like, for me, you have to weigh what you want, right? And Michael, what's your approach when it comes to the drink package, really?
Yeah, it's funny, Frank, because like we mentioned at the start, this was one of the first episodes we did. I didn't go back. I should have went back and listened to what we said then to kind of talk more now. But I feel like that episode, we probably talked more about the alcohol drink package. But like you said, there are other options out there. I know me personally, I've added, I think, the alcohol drink package a couple times on Royal, once on Carnival, and then I've done like a coffee card once. I know me personally, I don't drink a lot of sodas or stuff like that. So like a basic refreshment package probably isn't going to have as much value to me, because I think that's one thing. I don't know if we probably talked about it back in the day, but kind of comparing what the price is, what the going price is for the different packages, right? And how much you're willing to spend on your sailing at the end of the day based on how much you're going to drink. Like I said, I know for me, the basic refreshment packages probably aren't going to make much sense. But I know, like I said, there was a sailing. I knew my Mediterranean sailing, for example, I knew we weren't going to be on the ship that much. So a coffee card, for example, made much more sense for me overall.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it too is like who you're cruising with, where you're cruising. Like, I mean, I don't know. What are you thinking about doing for Alaska? Have you made the decision yet?
Yeah, Alaska, I know I'm probably not going to be adding any of it, because I know what we have, like 3 or 4 port days, and they may not be as long as Mediterranean port days, for example, but I know like there are a couple like distilleries I'm looking at going to at some of the ports, so I know I'll probably be having a drink or two off the ship.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Michael. Like, it's different when you're in the sun in the Caribbean and you're just laying out by the pool every day, and like you're at Coco Cay.
Yeah.
Like, again, Coco Cay, you're going to drink more because you're literally like they're bringing you drinks while you're in the pool. You're going to drink more, right? They charge more for the drink package on those cruises. But for us, when we're in Alaska, like it's more just like relaxation, really soaking in the views, and you're off the ship doing some really cool itinerary, like excursions and stuff. So I'm personally not doing it on our cruise, to be honest, but it's just something that is really personal. Like there's going to be people on our cruise that are going to have it because they enjoy, having a mimosa or doing a Bloody Mary in the morning and then drinking a couple of drinks at night. And there may be some days where we, want to go and buy drinks. Well, you can always buy drinks ad hoc and add them onto your account. But for the most part, it's one of those things where it's like, it really does depend on who you're cruising with, how long the cruise is. Like 7 nights, like we've talked about, it gets difficult to really make the money work at the end, because you could really make it work on day one and then you kind of get burnt out after 5 or 6 days. At least I do. I don't know. It gets harder after 4, 5, 6 days of drinking like 10 plus drinks a day to just like, you just get kind of sick of it. Like my body is asking for water at this point.
Yeah, and like you mentioned the vlogs at the start, like 3-4 day guys cruise, yeah, it made sense. We all added it on. We had a great time with it. But like you said, after the 3-4 days, like you said, it just gets hard to really drink enough to make it seem worth it at the end of the day.
I did see that Carnival raised their price on this. So they're up to like $82 a day, $82.50, which includes their taxes and fees. Some of the other cruise lines are going down. I know Royals fluctuates. Like on our Alaska, it was like $60, I think, per person per day, maybe. And it just depends. Again, one is static, like Carnival is static. Royal's pretty dynamic. Norwegian builds it into the price. So if you're listening and you're going to get the drink package, like, and everyone on your cruise is going to get the drink package, then I would say Norwegian's a great line, because you're going to pay for it regardless. But those are just things to think about when you're looking at a drink package.
Then you have Virgin, where it doesn't even exist. So.
Yeah.
Bar tab.
Exactly. All right, Michael, what about the photo packages on cruises?
Yeah, this is something I can never say I've ever added. I mean, I probably have never taken more than a single photo or two on a cruise. And I feel like if it's something you're going to add, especially because, they're not the cheapest at the end of the day, you're going to want to make sure you're actually taking advantage of it and taking like the professional photos each night. And I know on Carnival, for example, when I've done like Bolt in the past, that they take your photo on that. So like if you're going to have a package, you're going to want to make sure you're getting your photo taken. I mean, we had Hans and Sherry on the podcast the other week, and they were talking about their Sun Princess sailing, and it was kind of built into their Princess Plus package that they had. And I know they said they were able to download all of the digital photos and then still get like 3 or 4 printout photos a piece. So, for example, like that, if it's included in a package already, dude, like I said,
I'd be getting so many photos.
Exactly. Take advantage of it, because, I mean, the photos do come. I mean, some photos are, and some of the backgrounds are a little cheesy at the end of the day, but like the photo we took of us guys, I mean, you get your one free photo, so you downloaded it, you send it to all of us, and it works. So, I don't know. Have you added on a photo package ever?
No, I've never added on the photo package. I really like, since I have the perks with Royal, I go and try to get my free one, and then my wife will get her free one. It's a nice perk, actually, because it's like, kind of remember the cruise from like one photo kind of thing. But to your point, like if I didn't have that, I wouldn't stand in those lines trying to get photos. And even now we're at the point where it's like, I hope Alaska has like some sort of a cool backdrop, because it's like, how do you
think so.
distinguish? I'm wearing like the same jacket that I always wear. It's like, how do I remember that's that cruise, you know?
They're going to have some sort of like icebergy background. People are going to just come out like whatever they wore at the port for the day, all dressed up. Just probably take photos with that because I don't know, it look kind of funny being dressed up in a suit or something, and then it's just like iceberg.
Exactly.
All right, Frank, the last thing we have written down on our list is excursions. You know, we've kind of talked over the pros and cons of booking through the cruise lines. What would you say for somebody who's looking to add on an excursion to their sailing?
You know, I think it's a good question, right? When it comes to excursions, because there is something really nice about booking the excursion through the cruise line that's like just makes it so easy, right? They say, hey, meet us in the theater. We're going to be there at 9 a.m. We're all going to walk off together. We're going to get in this bus. It's going to take you to this thing. You're going to come back. It's really, pretty easy. It's kind of just like turnkey. The downsides of that is when I said like we're all going to meet, it usually means that there's 50 people that are getting in a bus with you. And, it could be a little bit less of a personalized experience. And I think now they're starting to introduce a lot of these cruise lines more personalized white glove service options. I've seen a lot of cruise lines coming out with that now, which is really cool. We love like smaller excursions, and some of our favorite excursions are like 20, 30 people and less on a boat versus like, some of the cruise lines when they take you on these catamarans in the Caribbean, it could be like 60 people on a cat and it's like you're squished, right? So it's just something to think about. Like, are you looking for convenience or are you looking for something that's a little bit more exclusive? And also you could get more potentially for your money by going on a private excursion or doing something through like a Viator or TripAdvisor versus doing, something through the cruise line. So there's risks with that, right? That like the company needs to get you back to the ship at the right time, but there's some benefits that come with it as well. So I think it just depends on where you are, how much time you have, right? So when we were in St. Thomas, we did the St. John one through the cruise line because we really wanted to go to St. John, and it's really, really hard to do that by yourself. Like the logistics of getting to the Red Hook ferry and all that, like it was just easier to get off the ship. And yes, we were like taken with a bunch of guests and you didn't really feel like it was personalized, but we were able to get there really quick and do what we wanted within a smaller window of time. So those are just things to consider, honestly. Like I would say, yes, look to add and see what options they have, but then also shop around and see if you can get maybe a better price through a third party, and just kind of see what the different options are. Like maybe you can get the same price, but do a private one with maybe only 10, 15 people versus like 50 plus people,
Yeah, and if you're a first-time cruiser and kind of just looking for the peace of mind, then probably look at booking through the cruise line. I know that's something my family did a lot early on when we first started sailing. Now, like you said, I kind of do my research and kind of look out on the different sites to, like you said, find more private and often cheaper than what the cruise lines are offering excursion-wise. Well, Frank, I think that's going to wrap up kind of this list of things to add and not to add to your upcoming cruise vacation. We hinted at the website in the future. You've been working on some blog posts. So that's kind of a feature that you're going to see on the website in the future. This is something that could obviously be a blog post in the future too, and just new things added to it.
Yeah, we're excited about that. So make sure you, again, bookmark cruiseconversationspodcast.com. Make sure that you check it out over the next couple of weeks. We're excited for what all is to come there. Well, Michael, this is going to wrap up this week's episode. And if you're listening and you're interested in becoming one of our clients, we'd love to work with you to help plan your next cruise. You can shoot us a text at 704-313-8556 or fill out the Jot form in the description of this podcast. Thank you so much for listening. We hope that you've enjoyed this, and we'll see you back here next Wednesday.